My name is David Ward. I'm the CEO and founder of SafeSite Check-In. Happy to be able to have a conversation today with two people from the construction engineering industry that I think we'll have an interesting conversation with. The one is Neil Sayre, who's the Director of Field Operations of Peacock Construction. Peacock Construction is a commercial interiors specialist in the San Francisco Bay Area, particular emphasis on healthcare, OSHPOSH and similar kinds of construction challenges. And he's their head of field operations. I'm also happy to have our founding customer, which is Peacock Construction. He was our first customer of SafeSite Check-In. So that's Neil. And then I've also have Ron Courtney, who's the manager of health, safety, and environmental services at Empirical. And that, I'll have both Rod and Rod, why don't you describe Empirical a bit, because you're a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So Empirical, we've been around about 15 years. We started as an engineering firm, strictly engineering, and even more specifically, substation and transmission and distribution engineering. About 8 or 9 years ago, they started an EPC division, or engineering, procurement, and construction division, where we actually did construction of substations and T&D lines. And even more recently, we've started our own construction company. So we have all aspects from engineering all the way through commissioning of substations and T&D lines, and we're licensed in all 50 states.
Very good. Well, for people on the call that maybe aren't SafeSite Check-In customers, we have developed a very easy to deploy web app, which allows you to effectively screen for COVID conditions and store records digitally. We've made it very easy to use. You can be up and running in minutes, literally. We launched right around July 1st of this year. We've been in operation for 5 months. We now have sites up and running in 45 states. Currently have about a little over 300 sites active construction and office sites as of today. And we're growing very rapidly. But one of the things that people find useful in these webinars is to trade and share their experiences with particularly new digital technology. SafeSite's part of a general trend that's accelerating the use of digital technology in all industries, not just construction, engineering, and architecture. So the discussion today will be focused on topics, of course, COVID related, but also just the effect of introducing digital technology into a part of the business where maybe it wasn't so present before. So that being said, why don't we start with Rod? And I know you're responsible for sort of the overall safety and risk management at Empirical. So maybe you can talk about how the pandemic has what it's done for your workload. Let's put it that way.
Well, in the construction world, we're actually pretty fortunate because we're considered critical infrastructure. So workload, it didn't affect us. And that can be a good or a bad thing, in the middle of a pandemic. So on March 17th, 2020, we enacted our emergency action and business continuity plan. On the 18th, we sent all of our employees to work either remote or from home. And other than we still have, no, that's the office people, but at the time we had half a dozen or so, maybe 8 construction projects going on across the country. And then since then, drafters are working from the office in Mandeville, Louisiana. Other than that, the other 250 or so full-time employees are still working remote. However, we do all visit the office from time to time.
Right.
So, we still, everybody's still using, the safe site check-in. So when it all started, and I'm sure those that are on listening probably remember this, back in April or so, the CDC came out with, I don't know, 6 questions, I guess it was. Have you been to China? Have you been on a cruise? It was, just a few questions that said, this is our self-check. This is what we need to do. You need to ask everybody these questions. And so, we put it on a PDF. We made a document out of it and sent it out to all employees and said, thou shall, and you need to fill these questions out and turn them in before you go to the office. It worked. We were able to, make sure that out of 250 employees, I don't know, we had probably 30 to 50 a day going to one of the offices across the country. But I've got construction sites that have anywhere from 2 employees to manage to, 50 or 60 employees that are doing the thing. And they're all coming to my email. So I'm getting 150 emails a day of just COVID-related questionnaires, self-checks.
Wow.
Now, again, we're doing the right thing. We're trying to do right by our customers and by our employees. And it honestly just got to be too much. I mean, it became almost a full-time job for me, and I have one assistant that was helping me. It was too much. There was too much information, and it was just stored in folders on my desktop. Now, thank goodness back then we didn't have to do any contact tracing. We were fortunate. But had I had to do, and this is what brought up us researching and ultimately finding you, David, is in safe site check-in, is because if I had to contact trace something back then, it was virtually impossible. Going through hundreds or thousands of documents. So we did a little research, and there are other companies out there doing similar things. But what we found was price-wise, it is extremely economical. If you're a construction company that has multiple sites, and that's how they set it up for you, is they set you up a site. So your site can be a construction project, or your site can be an office, or your site, however you want to set it up. And they don't charge by how many people check in at that site. It's not that. Where other companies did, they wanted, per person, and I mean, that just got a little outrageous. So financially, it was the right decision. And I like to bring to the owners of our company, multiple options to say, look, here's what we have. And Safe Site Check-In was able to offer us exactly what we needed through, like you said, David, through a virtual or online platform where we just put the posters up at the front entrances of our project sites and our offices, and it's all maintained in the cloud now. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Of course, I'm of 2 minds about the fact about how economical we are, as a business.
Yeah.
Well,
that
Neil,
doesn't mean you can raise our price now.
Yeah, I know. Everybody asks me that. Well, Neil, you were probably part of the discussions at Peacock in that time frame as well, March, April. What was the conversation back then?
Yeah, what had happened in March was the San Francisco area had shut down, as well as Alameda, but luckily all of our healthcare division was still going because they were essential. And we did the same thing. We had the PDF, we had a book, and everybody sign in every day and take pictures of it and send it into the office so we could put it in a folder. So we were doing that, and that just really wasn't working out too well for us. And that's when Kyle and I started talking. We said, hey, there's got to be, some way you can scan in. If you can scan a menu at a restaurant, why can't you scan in somewhere?
Right.
And so Kyle started, the owner, CEO, he started looking into it and came up with some ideas. And that's how we partnered with you. And it was working great. We could eliminate all the paper, which is something that we want. We don't want everybody touching a pen and touching the folder and
Right.
touching the papers. So the touchless was great. All the medical sites, Kaiser and different locations that we were working at, Sutter Health, they all loved it. We were fortunate for working in the healthcare. Everybody was giving us their guidelines, and basically CDC stole all the healthcare's guidelines because you could see, because they came out with it first before the CDC. So we were able to compile our plan based on what we had received from the several different medical facilities we work in. And one of the main things, they put the contact tracing, which luckily you have, and they require us they wanted it daily, but we were able to get them to concede and take it once a week. So we wouldn't have all this paperwork at 5 o'clock in the afternoon that we're trying to give them.
Yeah.
And then the best thing is the new analytics that you have, we're able to give them access, and they can go right into their project only. And we don't even have to send it to them anymore. They have access 24/7. They go in, look at what they want, get the information they want. They're happy. We're happy. We don't have to do it. Our support staff in the office doesn't have to deal with it. And so that's been a great time saver right there.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear that that owners, whether it's the hospital or any other sort of building owner, wants to know what's going on, in their facility. Very directly relevant to a hospital, of course, but I think it's probably true of commercial buildings as well. To know what's going on at their site, and particularly in a pandemic. Actually, you brought up, sort of the issue of local criteria. So, Rod, you're responsible for multiple states. You talk a little bit about what you're doing to, sort of keep track of things, because yes, there's the CDC guidelines, but there's a lot of local variation, right?
Yeah, it's there we have 50 different states, and there's 200 different requirements, because a lot of states are doing it by county. I live in Louisiana. We call them parishes here, but luckily Louisiana, it's a statewide mandate. Most states are like that. But California, for example, we have some offices over there, and it's per county over there. You can, Neil and I were talking prior to us starting this, and like you said, you could be in one county and you couldn't buy a hamburger, but you literally drive across the street into another county, and I can do whatever I want over here. And it's very difficult to keep up with it all. So what we do is take the most strict regulation per state and implement that for our company.
Right.
Now, here's the thing. The differences from a company perspective are things like, first of all, can you even go to the office? When some are in total lockdown, but as long as you can get out and move around, and you can get to an office, some of the differences are some places require temperature checks, require, certain things like that. Some don't, that goes back and forth. But the one thing that's consistent, and everywhere you go, we have to do some type of a self-check, and we have to be able to track that, right? And we have to know who's in our office or who's on our location,
right.
And so we can go back and be able to contact trace if necessary. So the one consistent for us is Safe Site Check-In. We're able to use that one platform across all of our states, and it's all ADA and HIPAA compliant. I don't have to worry about people's medical records or medical questions or any of that stuff getting in the wrong hands. I mean, it honestly is, you know, it took you guys, I think, I don't know, a couple hours to set up all the sites that we have. And you know, as long as the employee knows, hey, take your little phone, scan the QR. First time you do it, you have to put your name and a few other things in there. But after that, it recognizes your IP and you don't have to do that even. And you just scan it, you know, and then you answer half a dozen questions or how many questions you have set up for your location. And it will tell you if you have access or not. So it's pretty efficient after that.
Yeah, that was our explicit design goal, was to make it essentially zero training. You know, get it to the point where, you know, nobody needs to be trained on this. I think we've come as close as we possibly can, you know, to that ideal. But you mentioned the sort of the lack of, we don't have national standards, we have local standards or state standards. But what that really means, and I've been using the term, you know, sort of business contact tracing, that what we're doing is protecting our business and our employees and the visitors, you know, to our business. You know, that's what we can do as business leaders in the absence of you know, sort of global standards, you know, about, you know, COVID screening and care. I know that, you know, Neil has had an actual, you know, reported case. I thought maybe, Neil, it'd be interesting for you to talk about that, because there's a couple of things unusual about it. One was you only heard about the exposure some days after you know, the gentleman discovered the case. And it sort of shows the limits of anything we can do as a business, because we can't keep track of people outside of, you know, when they're in the workplace.
Correct. Yeah, what we had is we had a subcontractor who was working on one of our construction sites, and he was working there on Wednesday, and then he didn't show up again. Well, his company failed to notify us that the reason why he didn't return to work on Thursday is because he was feeling ill. He was able to get a test on Saturday, which came back positive, and yet they still didn't tell us until that following Thursday. So by the time we found out, which he came in on Wednesday, and he had gone through the scanning, because we have for $29 you can get the thermometers. So we have the scanners on all our projects. He went through there, didn't have a fever at that time. But by the time the company had notified us that they had a positive case and that it was on our site, we were able to immediately go through, trace to see who was on that project, no matter what company they worked for. And we were able to reach out and contact them all and give them all proper notification that they had a potential exposure. Yeah. So we notified all of the other subcontractors. We notified building ownership of what had taken place. We are going in a specific route. So we come in and out through the back door, loading dock, so to speak. So we're not going through the lobbies. So we're able to keep our own entrance. And then we were able to trace our own employees and make sure that they didn't have any exposure. And we also got them tested just to be safe, even though it was a good 10 days after the initial contact. Yeah. So that was that instance. But yeah, the time it saved just to be able to punch in our job number, and automatically it brought up every name of everybody who was on that project. We were then able to take those names and put them in the database to search to see if they had gone to any other projects of ours. Yeah. You know, there's delivery men and you know, the electrician may come for half a day, or the supervisor comes and then he leaves, goes to another project. So we were able to trace them for every single one of our projects, that if they were even on it. So that saved an immense amount of time.
Yeah, I can't imagine doing this on paper. You know, even I think you had to handle this case even before we had fully automated the report. It's pretty complicated, you know. you got to say at this point in time,
Exactly.
you know, backwards 2 weeks across all sites. It's not a simple, you know, simple query, you know, that you have to do.
Yeah, because, you know, it comes down to, you're not supposed to know the person's identification, which makes it impossible to trace them. But, you know, luckily it's, you know, hey, Joe, the electrician, he's sick. Okay, well, now we can see if, yeah, hey, was Joe on your job? And we were able to track and trace, as well as with the paperwork, just to make sure that no one had come in contact with them. And if they did, you know, what was your period of time? What was your distance? Everything. Are you showing any symptoms? And so that was crucial. It was,
Yeah.
we would have probably had shut down, you know, 3-4 projects for 14 days if we weren't able to trace and see that, you know, he didn't go to this project, and he was only at that project for a couple minutes dropping off some blueprints. He didn't have in contact with anybody other than one of his workers, and that was for less than 5 minutes. So that was a big help in order to keep things moving and keep things going.
You know, you had mentioned the varying requirements for temperature taking. You know, we have a lot of discussions internally about this, and you know, our view is that the temperature taking is kind of a security theater.
Yes.
You know, these remote, you know, $50, you know, thermometers. I just can't believe that they're really very accurate or useful, and short of somebody, you know, running a 440 sprint up to the job site, I'm not sure it would, you know, ever show a condition, particularly in the winter and fall months. On the other hand, our feeling is that there's a lot of inspectors that just want to see that that's being recorded as part of an ongoing procedure that sort of suggests to everybody this is important, you got to take it seriously, you got to comply. Rod, what's your feeling about that? Because I know you have some more advanced technology at certain sites.
Yeah, we what we did, the company purchased, it's a system, and I'm not, you know, saying what system to use. The one we are using is one called RMS Omega, standalone unit that sits at the front entrance to our offices. What we liked about it was it you know, from what we can tell, does give internal body temperature versus surface temperature. And it also has facial recognition, and it talks to our HR software. So everyone that's in our company, we get a badge, and it has our picture on the badge. Well, that picture is also uploaded into that system. So when I go and, you know, I do my bar for safe site check-in, it gives me access. I go, you know, do my temperature, and it gives me access. That particular system also connects to our security doors at our office. So it'll either, you know, it'll unlock it for you as long as your temperature's right.
Yeah.
If we have a visitor that comes in, it takes their picture. So that way, again, we're able to, you know, they have to do the RMS, or they have to do safe site check-in, and because there's a poster at the entrance that explains it to them. And then they stand in front of the unit, it takes their picture, and it's another way for us to track and trend, you know, who's been at the office and who they were there to see and so on. You know, I'm like you, I don't know that, you know, so once let's take safe site check-in out of the equation for a second. And but there are a lot of companies that are, you know, filling out a piece of paper, maybe some aren't even doing that. They're just taking your temperature, and if you're good, you're good. So if we only had the temperature, by the time you get to the office, if you've got a temperature, it's too late. You're already there, and you're exposing people.
Right.
Exposed everybody that you came in contact with on the way to work too. What we do, yes, we have the posters at the entrances, you know, but every employee has printed copies of their QRs that they need for whatever office. So they can do this before they leave home, you know?
Yeah.
Now, we have had some try to do it the day before. So we had to, that was an internal thing we had to correct. But now they know, hey, look, as of that morning, you can just do this at home when you're eating your Cheerios, right? Do it. now you know, am I going to be allowed to go or not? If it says no, don't leave the house. So I don't worry about exposing people that way. But as far as temperatures, you know, it's when I have to explain to OSHA that I'm doing everything possible to protect employees, it looks good. It actually does.
Yeah.
How accurate or how, meaningful is it? You know, that's up for debate. Yeah.
Yeah. But you made a good point about, using SafeSite remotely, for either occasionally going to sites or just driving from home there. That's actually a use case I think not a lot of our customers know about, but for the ones that have office environments and people are just occasionally going to the office, it's one of the more useful features we have that keeps everybody under the same screening regimen. Maybe we shift back over to other questions about one thing I'd like to talk to Neil a bit about ask is I believe, with SafeSite for the first time, you're getting digital data from the construction job sites. And are you finding uses for that data, beyond the screening of health and safety?
Exactly. It's been a pleasure to easily track who's coming and going on the project, what time they get there, what company they're with, all that information. And I had mentioned to you previously that we had an incident where we had received a change order from one of our subcontractors for outlandish amount. And we talked with the superintendent and he said, no, there wasn't that many guys here. And we requested the time cards from our subcontractor and they showed that they had 15 guys there for over a week. And we're like, that's just not the case. That's not what our records show. Well, we were able to go and pull up the data from the check-ins, and we were able to see you had 7 guys there on Monday and you had 8 guys on Tuesday, but then you trailed off to 4, 4, and 4 the rest of the week. So, something's wrong with your internal time card system. Here's our data. So either you didn't follow our rules and you entered into the building without going through the check-in system that we have in place, or you screwed up on your time card. So which is it? Are you not following our rules and you don't want to work for us any longer? Or did you make a mistake on your time cards? So we were able to straighten that out, and they had realized that the guys working on the project had the job number for that project and just put it there for all week just to make it easy on their time card. So they were able to find that on their part and straighten it all out. So it's very helpful, and we plan on continuing to use it because we're adding it as part of our daily logs. So rather than have the superintendent or a foreman or somebody stand like a guard at the front door and count people for their daily logs and reports, now we're able to access that information as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe shift over. Neil talked a bit about the cost of adding an actual case and having to perform contact tracing. Rod, I think the other day we were talking about just the value to your company of preventing any such cases, because there's a bunch of cascading consequences that are possible, for a contractor. Maybe you can talk a bit about it, because you went into some detail the other day.
Yeah. So if anybody that's online with us now, if you're a construction company, you understand what an OSHA 300 log is, and the thing is right now, because it's considered a pandemic, if the infection can be traced back to your work site, it is an OSHA recordable accident. And then whatever the quarantine time is, sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's 14 days, just depending, but you could have up to 14 days of lost time. God forbid they pass away from this. Now you have a job-related fatality because someone got COVID at your office. Now, what does that do for Brown and Root? Probably nothing. They've got, 30,000 employees. What does that do for Amazon or 3M or Dow? Maybe nothing. What does it do for Empirical? We have 250 employees. Our clients, we wouldn't even be able to bid their jobs for the next 3 years. If our EMR, which is the experience modifier that we get from our workers' comp carrier, if that number goes above a 1.0, we're not even allowed to bid the job. We're literally talking hundreds of millions of dollars. My company would lose in not profits, obviously, but I mean, in work.
Right.
At, if we allow one case to happen. So it's just not worth it for us. And then now we're talking about vaccines are coming, right? And everybody's, and I'm not here to tell you if you should or shouldn't take the vaccine. That's not the point. But the CDC says nationwide, it should be approved on December the 10th. At their December 11th or 12th, it'll be out in the different states for medical people first, right? Frontline, people. Then after that, it goes into the congregate setting people, nursing homes and things like that. And eventually it'll get down to, the rest of us. Now, best case scenario is that we have to hit 75% herd immunity before we're going to get back to anything that even resembles normal across the country. That's still 25% that's out there that, still either, has it or could get it or whatever. So those numbers still don't work well for me from a construction company standpoint. But if we're going to, that assumes that everybody possible takes the vaccine. There's a lot of assumptions there that honestly, we all know it's not going to happen that way. It's just not. So right. It will be, I think, best case scenario at the latter part of next year before we're back to some resemblance of normal. And even then, for those of us, again, I keep saying the word construction company, but for those of us that are, is that 25% possibility worth it for me? So for me, for my company, one of two things has to happen. It has to go by the wayside like polio did, where there's just not any cases, or OSHA's going to have to change their ruling, right? Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that I want anybody to get sick or any of that stuff on our project, and we will still protect everybody and all that. But those, right now, if I allow it to happen, it'll be astronomical for us.
Right. No, I think it's been very instructive hearing you talk about the risk of a 200, 300 person, sort of company versus a 30,000 person. They can absorb it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so as we all know, 90% of construction companies can't absorb it. I mean, yep. They're just not big enough. All right. Yep. I mean, you have, sort of similar conversations in Peacock, Neil?
Yeah, we do. I mean, it was even before the pandemic, it's you got to keep an eye on the mod rate. We do work for PG&E like Rod does, and, in the healthcare, a lot of the healthcare outfits, Stanford Medical. If we've got too many reported injuries, we're off the bid list. If it comes down between us and another contractor, all that comes into play. That starts helping to the prices are the same, everything's apples to apples. They start running down that list, and you got a few dings. You're unsafe. We don't want you on our property. So we discussed that injuries. This is a big one because these are, as much as you can do the preventions, and we require everybody take their temperature before they even leave the house. All that, this situation is still something that we don't have as much control as we do over someone cutting their hand or falling off a ladder or they're not tied off correctly.
Yep.
You know, this guy goes to dinner with his wife and he comes in on Monday and he's sick. You know, there's nothing I can do about that, but all I can do is contain it and hope that we don't have lost time and that we don't get dinged for it, because that's what's not being fair is with OSHA. OSHA's not playing fair, and they're not playing fair over here like they should. They're just, everything's an injury. You know, it's like, hey, you got to work with us on some of this stuff.
Well, and like you said, Neil, you know, you said you do work for PG&E. So we do work for them. We do work for Entergy here in Louisiana. So here's the thing. They use different systems to qualify and quantify their subcontractors. PG&E, for example, they use a system called ISNet, right? And ISNet takes the human factor out of it altogether. You're either red or green.
Correct.
The system doesn't care. Yeah. The system doesn't care why you're green or red or whatever. It just knows you're red. So you don't even get to bid the job when you're red. And it might be, you know, there's no telling what it could be, but, you know, speaking strictly of COVID, somebody at our office ended up with COVID, or we had an outbreak of COVID on a construction site. And next thing you know, we're red in ISNet, and we're not bidding jobs anymore. So you're right. You know, so it's because it's considered a pandemic that OSHA is saying that it's recordable. It's a known hazard, they're saying. Whereas the flu, although some years we do have an epidemic of the flu, but it's not a known hazard unless it becomes a pandemic. Pandemic just means it's on a certain number of continents. So once the pandemic title goes away, OSHA should go back to, you know, the way that they treat the flu, for example, and not be recordable. But for now, like you said, fair or not, go ahead and get you a couple of these and watch what happens. Yeah,
it's a blunt instrument.
Yeah.
And Rod, you also, even though I don't think you've had a live case.
We did. Yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because
all right. So we have a project in Jackson, Mississippi. Anybody again that you know works remote construction like this, you understand we're hiring people from all over the country. They drive in, they're there, they're living on per diem. And when these guys are living on per diem, they will pack a hotel room. All right. They'll have 6 people living in a, you know, on 2 queen beds in a hotel room with a hot plate to cook on. No, they do, because that's tax-free money, right? And then So we had an 11-person crew that they had their 3-day break, right? So they all go to their separate homes or whatever. And when they came back, they had that one night together at the hotel. The next morning, one of those people checked, I don't even know which one it was, but was not allowed on site. Well, again, that because of the situation, that triggered, hold up, all 11 of you can't come on site then because you've all been exposed to this. At the end of the day, and it took a few days for all this to pan out, but 9 of the 11 were positive for COVID before it was all over with. And thanks to the fact that we were checking it before they got there, and we had, I had good safety people on site that were able to point out the fact that, hey, they all live together. We were able to keep it from getting on the site and then keep it from transmitting from the site.
Okay. And then, one of the other questions from the audience had to do with, what's your notification protocol if something flashes red? Who gets informed and maybe what internal processes you follow? Neil described how, whether it was required or not, just as a good business practice, they notified everybody of the potential exposure. But, Rod, you have you're very procedure oriented, so I'm sure you've got something in place on this.
We do. And so again, we have the 2 different systems, and they both have their tipping point, right? So safe site check-in, for example, If they answer one of the questions incorrectly, I say incorrectly, it's a correct answer, but it goes against policy. For example, they had a fever, or they've been exposed, or whatever, they've been diagnosed. What that does is, as soon as they submit that, messages go out to myself, their manager, and our HR. So it automatically goes to those people. Same thing with our other system, it goes to the same group of people. If they're denied access, I know as the HSE manager for the company, their manager knows that, hey, your employee isn't going to be able to come in the office. And then HR knows, because we've allotted extra days for sick leave during the time. And it's just one of those things that has to be really, really closely tracked, because some of those sick days, we're able to actually turn that into the government and get reimbursed for it. And by using this system, we're able to track that, and they know, okay, this person was sick on this day, and here's the 10 days he was not at work. We're going to pay him for, I don't know, 8 of those days or whatever, sick leave, and then you can submit that when this is all done and get reimbursed for it.
Okay. All right. Neil, do you want to talk a bit about your process?
Yeah, on our construction projects, what happens is the superintendent of the project gets notified. I get notified simultaneously. Our HR gets notified, just because they're tracking and keeping everything together.
Right.
The superintendent checks with the individual to see if they answered a question wrong, or what took place. And then based on what information he finds out, if it's a mistake, he sends out a notification to myself and HR that, hey, it was a mistake. He hit the wrong button. And then the individual retakes it. And when access is granted, then comes into work. If the individual answers a question because they were exposed or something, they're asked to leave the site. They're removed off the site. And then they contact their employer. If they're a subcontractor, or if they're one of our employees, they contact myself. And then we start the process on going through. We do the investigation, where they've been, who they've been in contact with, and then we get them set up. We have a rapid testing site that we have a contract with.
Okay.
We'll send them off over there to get them tested, and go from there. If they're not a Peacock employee, then what we do is we notify that company, hey, your employee at this time, blah, 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 came in, and we turn it over to them. We do require them to get that individual tested. We need to have a negative test, or be kept informed. So because we have a responsibility to let the building owners that are letting us come into their site to work, we have to keep them informed of what's going on. If there's any potential contact with, say, a security guard or a building engineer or something along those lines. So that's how we handle those.
Yeah, it's a very different experience in the United States from other countries. That all these responsibilities are put on us as business people.
Exactly.
Although we do know that in different parts of the country, the case reporting protocols differ. In some locations, it's just, okay, you had a case, tell us, meaning the local health authorities, and give us the information, we'll take it from there. But there's a lot left to just the judgment of individual business managers, I think, everywhere. And it has to do with, our brands, our business brands, and our reputation, among our business partners and customers and employees.
Yeah, we've been fortunate because we only had the one positive case. Unfortunately, we didn't find out till 10 days later that he was. But yes, since that was an eye-opening experience right there, because that made us, we had to change our master work agreement and some other things we did, and we had to reissue those because we were afraid that our subcontractors weren't taking this as seriously as we were, and that they were putting our employees and our company at risk by shutting us down for 14 days, or even worse, someone gets sick and takes it home and transmits it to their family.
Right.
Because Peacock started in 1983. I came on board in 1986, and since the day I've started working here, the goal's been, hey, you when you come to work, our goal is for you to go home the same way that you came, in the same condition, same amount of fingers, same amount of toes, same amount of limbs. That's how we want you to return back home to your family. You're here to make a living, and we don't want to take away from your, basically, the quality of your life with your family. So everybody's here because of their family. They're not here because they want to work for Peacock.
Yeah. No, that's an important attitude. And so many industries don't have the risk profile. It's I've spent 40 years in the software industry. Aside from driving to and from the office, I had no fear of losing my life on the job. Very different world you guys operate in. Hey, so we're about 50 minutes in. I as I said the other day, I thought we'd finish with hearing both of you talk about how you see this ending, and the use of digital technologies like SafeSite, as the pandemic winds down, and God willing, it will, sometime within the next 12 months. So Rod, we already heard from you about taking the point of view of, herd immunity, and a lot riding on the willingness of the U.S. population to be vaccinated, and take it seriously. Do you have any sort of further thoughts about, just your view of the next year and how this plays out?
So, and we all hope, at least, that there comes a time that when you say COVID, it's something of the past, and I remember those days. Hey Neil, you remember back in 2020 that COVID thing? We hope that comes, and just like other diseases, polio and the Spanish flu and all that, it will go away. Okay, so eventually it'll be gone. Couple of things. This is different. All right, this is a coronavirus similar to the flu. Coronaviruses change. So
they mutate. Yeah,
exactly. They mutate. So my concern from a health and safety standpoint is this: that we get, everybody in the United States gets the vaccine or becomes immune to it one way or another. We're at 100%. A couple of years from now, a different version of this same thing comes in, just like the flu. If you get the flu shot, and I do, it's only 40% effective, because the other 60% are other types of flus that they don't even know are there yet. So, that's one concern, is that this is going to be similar. Mm-hmm. And the other is that, what is the response going to be? And again, I'm not getting political. This is not a political statement at all.
No, we're just taking care of our businesses. That's I have conversations with everybody.
Our current president has been chastised for the way he handled the pandemic. Maybe rightfully so, but that's beside the point. The next administration, when the next thing happens, because we had the swine flu, we had the bird flu, we had the mad cow, we had Ebola.
H1N1, yeah.
When the next one happens, what is that administration going to do? In order to not be chastised, in order to make sure that they're ahead of the game and they're doing all the right stuff, right? My fear is they're going to go overboard. I said those two things to say this. It is our intention to keep SafeSite check-in as long as SafeSite check-in will allow us to keep them. Like Neil said, we can use it for other stuff. It doesn't have to be just COVID. We put the questions up. We can, we can put trivia questions on it if we want to. But
Well, you would use it for flu anyways. I remember having this conversation with a couple of owners. They're like, why wouldn't you keep it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that again is our intention is because I don't see this going away completely anytime soon, but I see other uses for it also down the road.
It's certainly good for me to hear.
Yes.
All right, Neil, your turn, Neil.
Yeah, same thing here. We don't have any intention to stop using it at all. It would just be if COVID ends or comes to an end and winds down, then some of the questions would be getting changed. That's about it. But we're still going to continue to use it because we like the check-in process. We're able to know who's coming in, who's, when they get there, and we're able to trace them all. And, whether it's for flu or when all this is gone, we still wanted to have that ability to track who's coming and going on all of our projects. And, the question would be is what new questions do we come up with and how do we modify it? But we will come up with something, but we do plan on using it because our superintendents have been trained to use it as a tool, and it's showing, benefits, not just for COVID. And so it's something that we do want to use, and we use it as part of our daily logs and our daily paperwork and things that we have to do.
Just use it to run a better business,
Correct.
Profitability and stuff. Lately in this, our latest release, as you guys probably know, we do a release every week or so. But we've been adding features that we believe apply to just the general office environment. So for example, if you're going to visit an office or a site, we can prompt you for who's hosting you, and then we'll send an email or a text to the person hosting you. I know, particularly Neil, you work with, sort of commercial interiors, so this kind of question more for you. Do you think, the general office environment, should be adopting this as people start to come back to work? It's something that, we're looking at from a business point of view. And I imagine most offices are going to be similar to your headquarters, really.
They should. As maybe it's a false sense of security to some of their employees, but people are going to be returning back to offices because you're not as productive working from home as you think you are. So they are going to have people come back and work physically in the office. Now, whether it's a skeleton crew or not, and what we've had is they've wanted to use our check-ins as we said, sure, you can check in, but we're not responsible for you. But we want you to check in anyways because you are walking either through or on our site. We have a few projects where the tenant is still occupying the suite, but it's only three to five people.
Right.
Because they're essential. They're like the IT guy who's working, and we're on a different side of the floor. But we do ask them, hey, we get a little heat when the building's representatives come, like the property manager or the building engineer, and we're like, hey, you got to sign in. Well, this is my building. Sure, but this is my job site. You need to sign in, or you can't come in.
Yeah.
Because we need to know, and we're protecting you. Because if you don't check in and someone does come up sick, we can't notify you because we didn't know you were on the site. I don't know if they're on the site or not because I'm not on. We have 86 projects going. I can't be on all 86. Yeah. So if you don't check in, we don't know. Yeah. And one of the things that we had talked about in the future on using this was we wanted to maybe use it at the end. So, was the site clean? And even for the subs, did you feel the site was clean? Did you observe any safety issues or concerns that you have?
Yeah.
Were you injured today?
Yeah, we have signs that say, you know, safety observations, concerns. We have a hotline. It's an anonymous hotline, goes to HR, and anybody can call that number and say if they got an issue or a concern or they witnessed something. That's something that we want to put on the list as well. It wouldn't be anonymous, but it would still go to, you know, HR. So 'cause that's what we want to know. It's those questions that Kyle asked me, hey, come up with a laundry list of questions that we can use whenever COVID blows over. And because if we're going to use this and continue to use it, let's get as much use out of it as we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because we've also heard that it might be useful to, whether it's anonymous or not, allow workers and visitors to use their camera phone to take pictures or video and share that back with headquarters if there's some condition or, environment they want to report. Many different features of that nature that come. So I want to be respectful of our time.
Hey, David, this is one question. This is Seva. Just may I ask a question to the speakers. So you mentioned daily logs a few times. So has using something like SafeSat check-in changed your daily logs procedures or documentation as a best practice? This is, any one of you can start and the other finish.
I don't know about you, Neil, but for us, it's more of a backup. It hasn't changed anything we did on the front end. It's just an additional backup plan for us. But I'm sure you're probably different though.
No, we're actually, it's the same thing. We're still doing our daily logs like always. What it's helping us is we're getting a more accurate head count of who's on the project, because the superintendent may be laying out one subcontractor or with a building inspector, and then someone wanders on the site. And so that's helping in that. So we're getting an actual better count of who's coming and how many head counts they are.
Okay.
So we're using it that way.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, and thank you for taking care of your employees and visitors and companies as well as you are. My congratulations, and thanks for being a customer.
Well, thank you. Your product's making my job a lot easier.
Well, that's great to hear. You guys take care, stay safe, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Take care, Ron.
Thank you, all the participants and people listening. I hope you found this, very useful, and hope to hear from you as well. Goodbye now.